In early March of 2020, a month we can all recall, my senior year of high school was going great. At the time, I was looking forward to the release of Animal Crossing New Horizons within a week, which I was to pick up at a local GameStop after classes. I spoke with my friends in class about my excitement over the game. A few days after this, news of an emerging virus that had never been seen before broke out, and all students were to be sent home for 2 weeks. As one of my teachers put it, these 2 weeks or so of being sent home had happened previous years with a particularly infectious case of the flu, and everything had resumed to normal upon return. As I drove home on the interstate on March 12th with my backpack full of clothes, I ignored my mother's pleas to pack everything up. I passed by a sign to tune into a radio station about more information on COVID-19. This is when it started to hit me. On March 20th, I finally was able to pick up my copy of the game. On March 23rd, Louisiana was declared into a stay-at-home order, and thus began a new reality of life from then on, one that would require an outlet to cope with. Animal Crossing New Horizons is a life simulation game that puts the player in the role of island resident representative on a tropical island getaway run by a raccoon with an affinity for money and his two little assistants, which are also raccoons. As island representative, you serve the purpose of decorating and inhabiting the island, recruiting animal friends to live as your neighbors. You can fish, plant flowers, go shopping, visit the museum, decorate your house, invest in the stock market, or whatever else you want. You choose how to dictate how you play the game, and since the game runs in real time, with each minute in the game equating to a minute in real life, you can choose how much time to put into it. The game had amassed a huge excitement for its release, notably the strongest launch in history, as the previous games had come out nearly 8 years previously. The game resonated with people of all ages, those millennials who had played Animal Crossing New Leaf and wanted a new iteration of their favorite game, or younger kids who had just received a Nintendo Switch for Christmas and wanted a new game to play. However, it is undeniable that the pandemic brought much more attention to the game in a time where no one knew what to do besides make whipped coffee and watch TikTok. My early pandemic experience resembled much of everyone else's. March 23rd marked Louisiana's entrance into the stay-at-home order, characterized by confusion and conspiracy about the validity of the very real situation at hand, and much worry about the general fate of schooling and work. These fears were more greatly actualized on May 15th, where I remember tuning into a local news station to watch Governor John Bell Edwards define Phase 1. The importance of this declaration was that only essential businesses were to remain open, essentially shutting down everything that was not a grocery store or medical care facility. The new reality of living focused around preventing the spread of disease, which includes wearing masks, taking proper sanitization procedures, and most notably for this argument, isolating oneself. Certainly, all will agree that a lack of meaningful human contact is detrimental to one's own mental health and can have long-reaching effects on health and behavior. So, how do we deal with this when something like this has never happened before and we don't know how to cope? Well, we forget any sense of reality by catching virtual insects to display in a virtual museum and a virtual world to show your virtual friends who are wearing virtual frog costumes. This is our new escapism, and we can thank Nintendo for providing it. My school transitioned into an online format a few weeks after everyone settled into the idea that things are not going to quite look the same for a long time. This consisted of, for many, a lot of Zoom meetings and technical difficulties, but for some reason my professors did not take to the Zoom format and instead sent notes, lectures, and assignments as PDFs or submittable links, once again emphasizing this loneliness that has arisen from COVID-19. Soon enough, the semester was cut short, and in a dramatic video from our head administrator, we were broken the news that we would not be returning to campus at all, and that we unknowingly had our very last day of high school a few months back. As a senior, I was faced with the stressful decision of deciding the next 4 years of my life through my college decision. However, I think the most taxing phenomena that rose out of the pandemic was the distance from my friends, both physically and emotionally. It was hard for everyone to keep up with one another naturally, so it just became slowly easier to just stop trying. That was until one of my friends texted me out of the blue, asking me if I had the game and if I wanted to play together to see her island, both of which I of course responded yes. Animal Crossing provides us with a medium to connect with others at a time where we physically cannot. Some have used the game as a digital substitution for real life. Instead of cleaning your apartment when friends are coming over, you would instead pick the weeds from your island and make sure that your character is wearing the coolest outfit possible. And for one presidential candidate, creating a virtual campaign in Animal Crossing seemed to be the best way to connect to younger voters in September, a few months after the game's initial release. Certainly, many have considered this an odd move for the soon-to-be presidential-elect, but other virtual political efforts have previously occurred, such as with 2016 Hillary Clinton's Pokemon Go to the polls. As one can tell from the popularity of New Horizons to a broader audience and its purpose as a virtual world to experience, this campaign effort was more successful as a new tactic. Specifically, the campaign yard signs were introduced into this virtual world for players to use on their lawns. This once again reinforces the blurriness of reality and life in Animal Crossing, adding another element of realism into this virtual escape. Animal Crossing has served as an escape for those players plagued by the stress and anxiety from the real world and the worries of the coronavirus pandemic by providing a peaceful experience where one can manipulate things to go exactly their way at exactly their pace. As a greater picture look at this, the increasingly difficult to cope with stress because of the pandemic has created more cause for concern in the realm of mental health, and especially for those who have not had experiences with mental health issues before, it can be difficult to find a safe and effective coping mechanism. Escapism is often looked upon as a problem, since it's disconnecting people from the reality of living. But this historical period that we are now living in paints a different view of escapism, one that we can all relate to and empathize with. We have all recognized that stepping out of reality to cope is okay sometimes, and that there is a greater importance on providing resources like Animal Crossing to keep one another in check, even if the game wasn't exactly intended for these deeper meanings. It is almost exactly a year later at my time of recording this, and I still enjoy Animal Crossing occasionally when I have the free time. However, I don't feel the same experience that I once felt a year ago when it was one of the very few coping mechanisms I still had in a time where I had lost many of my friends, had to deal with college decision, tackle online school, all whilst being alone for most of the time. I'd accumulated over 200 hours into the game. I lament the loss of my passion for the game, but now I hold my island as more of a remembrance of the hard times that I had overcame, and now I do my best to preserve it in its state. Still, however, I like to check on my villagers to remind them that I'm doing alright.